the show that's only resolution was to continue digging deep on behalf of each and every one of you for this wild card weekend. I'm Chris Spags, joined again with the top DFS player in the world, the namesake of the website which employs me, and for that, we're all very grateful. Mr. Alex Baker, better known as Osmo. How are you doing, Alex?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm really excited for the playoffs because I feel like people have the playoffs and daily fantasy kind of backwards. I feel like pros lose interest because there's fewer games, but the casual players have way more interest in playoff games. They're like way more exciting games. This week's games may not be that great for fantasy, but the contests available on these sites are great, and I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you guys so that everyone has a good idea how to gain an edge this week.
And of course, we are also joined by a Roto World senior editor who we're going to really need this week because the playoff matchup things get tighter. So you want a guy who knows matchups better than anybody. And who else can you turn to but a guy who names his column that? Evan Silva. How are you doing, Evan?
Doing really well. And yeah, I mean, it's a really good week for our show because, Awesomo's always willing to dig real deep. He gave you Andy Jones in week 16, so but he's willing to go very, very deep, and really try to find the sleepers at scraping the bottom of the barrel for sleepers. I do other shows throughout the week, and they gloss over Vincent Smith, whereas I know that Awesemo, we're going to be talking about guys like that. So I'm excited for the show.
Yeah, this will be a good spot. We're going to do our best to walk you guys through each. Well, we are going to walk you through each game. We're going to do our best to find some of those under the radar spots that Evan talked about. And we are still presented by Fantasy Draft, so please go support them. Download Fantasy Draft. They have the lowest contest fees in the industry. They also pay out a minimum 25% of players, which is a great way to build bankroll regardless of skill level. You're competing against less sharp players on Fantasy Draft, and that's a big asset. You are a newer DFS player trying to kind of make your bones in the game. So use promo code CONTRARY. You'll get $5 free on your first deposit. And freebies like these, again, a great way to build your bankroll, get you a little more money in your pockets that you can then spend and win, hopefully. So go to fantasydraft.com now or download the app. Use that promo code CONTRARY for $5 free now. Alex, any quick fantasy draft thoughts for the folks out there?
Yeah, I'm just excited that Fantasy Draft has the full 4-game slate. Not every site is rocking all 4 games this week, and I think that it's more fun when you have the whole weekend to kind of sweat your lineups. So in addition to all the other reasons you should play there, that's a good one.
Yeah, so go check out Fantasy Draft now. Again, go to fantasydraft.com or download the app Fantasy Draft and use promo code CONTRARY for $5 free. We're going to go game by game for the slate, and there's one important distinction that Alex wanted to make up front. The FanDuel main slate is on Saturday. But we are just going to go game by game. We're going to try to focus on if there are FanDuel relevant things for that Saturday slate where a lot of the money is. The guys will talk about it as we go. But let's talk about the game that's first up on the slate, Indianapolis. Actually, no, wait. Let's talk about the thing that Alex has to do during the show. My bad. Don't want to blow past that. We do have a bet that had to be paid off between Alex and Evan. And the agreement was that Alex would be doing a power hour during this very show. So right now it's Alex 1:45 Central Time. Is that right? No, 12:45.
Yeah, that's right. Fortunately for you guys, or for me, you guys didn't specify what beverage we were using. So I have this 6-pack of LaCroix here. But, no, I'm just playing around. But the joke's really on you because I drink 5 beers during every show. What did you think was in those mugs?
So now you don't have to hide it. You can be a full-on alcoholic on the air and it'll be proud. It is a trust process here. We just have to. So I guess at the end of the show, you're just going to show us your 5 empties, and we'll know that you accomplished your goal.
Well, you'll see me doing it. If anyone wants to follow along, I have this power hour up on YouTube, the Revelry 90s Power Hour. So I'm expecting a lot of Brittany, Christina, and all those favorite artists that we all share.
So, if you masturbated to her in the 90s, it'll be on Alex's playlist. So we'll keep your high feel for Alex.
Barstool Spag, once per show. rear his head.
Jessica Simpson too. I just throw in the real fast. Anyway, let's get to the games. But keep an eye on Alex. If you're watching this video on YouTube, watch him throughout. See how he responds, because we'll be busy giving out NFL picks. Hopefully, this won't corrupt your thoughts too much. You won't give out guys like Andy Jones again if you get too drunk, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to give you guys another Andy Jones, but unfortunately, he's not. The Lions didn't make the playoffs. I'd love to run back this Andy Jones versus Alex Erickson bet, but we're gonna have to find someone else to bet on this week.
Hopefully we'll stumble across something. Alex would like Evan and I to make a bet. So we'll see what comes across this week. If there's anything interesting that pops to mind that we feel passionate about. And the first game to talk about that may have something to feel passionate about, Colts and the Texans is the highest combined total on the slate. Both quarterbacks are projected to be two of the highest owned on the slate as well. Andrew Luck in particular is expected to be the chalk quarterback, a little under 25% ownership. Alex, what are you seeing as the approach on this side? Price-wise, I guess, before we talk about the football machinations of it all.
Yeah, I think all the best plays are from this game. It's the fastest paced game. The two team totals are the two highest on the slate. Well, I guess Indianapolis is tied for second highest. So it's going to be interesting to see how much ownership is on this game, because if you really break it down, these teams are only projected to score a couple more points. Hold on. And I only have the game projected to have about 10 more plays in the game compared to the other games. So that's really a small difference. So if everyone is stacking this game, it might be a good situation to do the reverse thing and fade the game and just play the other three.
Yeah, it's definitely the one that jumps off the page, and I think will also come up a lot in the various optimizers, including Fantasy Cruncher, which you can get with us at Osmo.com. Use promo code Contrary for 1 week free there. But yeah, I think overall these guys are jumping out. DeAndre Hopkins on the Texans side projects for 43% ownership. As I mentioned, Andrew Luck, 25% ownership. T.Y. Hilton at 37% ownership. Eric Ebron at 35% ownership. Evan, how are you feeling about swallowing the chalk here, given that this game does seem like it may have the most upside?
Yeah, I mean, it makes the slate, kind of dicey, especially if you want to play like all the chalk. And it makes that last, Alex talked about how the Colts game, or I'm sorry, the Colts team total is the second highest on the slate. Well, who are they tied with? The Bears, and they're in the last game. So hey, if the Bears go off, which offenses have been known to do against this depleted Eagles defense, and we haven't seen a really big offensive performance from the Bears recently, but we did around midseason. And I mean, they have all hands on deck now. I mean, Allen Robinson's, all these guys are going to be available for the game after everyone kind of got nicked up at different points over the course of the season. Taylor Gabriel, Allen Robinson, Trubisky missed 2 games. Anthony Miller has been playing with a shoulder that keeps coming out of its socket. So, but all these guys are going to be there for this game, and they're at home. Where Mitchell Trubisky, over the course of the season, he has accounted for 27 all-purpose touchdowns. He's accounted for 21 of the 27 in home games. So pretty big home game splits for him, facing a non-imposing defense with all hands on deck, and the second highest team total on the slate. So I think that this Bears offense is a great place to look for contrarian lower owned plays. And it's fun because, in the last game, your winnings are going to be going up, as opposed to, hey, you stack that first game, your winnings are going to be going down for the rest of the weekend. You know what I'm saying? And I know I did a too much Bears analysis there for talking about the Texans Houston game, but I think that it's interesting how just the outlay of the weekend.
Yeah, and also the psychology behind it too. I think in general, DFS slates, I think it's more prominent in NBA, where you'll see people load up on earlier games and forget, like, oh yeah, the West Coast has games, and also a lot of teams with high totals. And I think that could be a bit of the brain process here. Alex, how do you think people are actually going to look at this game? Because it seems to me, based on all the media coverage and what I've seen and just people kind of talking on social media, that everybody's just viewing this as the game you have to have. Do you think that that's actually going to be the case when it comes down to it? Are people just going to really load up on this, and you could get drastically different by just not having any?
Absolutely. I mean, I've watched enough football, I'm sure everyone else has, to know there's never a game you have to have. you could have the highest shootout teams, and they could have like a final score that's like 14-10 or something. And if that happens, then you're definitely not going to need to sack the game. The total in the game is 48, which is about 6 or 5 to 7 higher than the other games. So if it goes under, and it goes under by like 7 points, like 1 touchdown, then you're gonna be in good shape if you don't have a lot of exposure.
Yeah, I would agree there. Evan, talk to me a little bit about, you have Kiki QT who might be back in the lineup. The Houston passing attack is going to be heavily centered in terms of ownership on DeAndre Hopkins, but both QT and Carter have shown some upside, and the Colts are pretty bad versus tight end too. Is there any way, I guess, outside of the DeAndre Hopkins going nuts narrative, which seems that people are going to be playing, is there any way you could see that breaking for the Texans where they're putting up points, but it's not through Hopkins?
Yeah. So we have to kind of try to figure out what the 3 receiver set is going to be if Kiki QT comes back. Kiki QT has been a very high percentage slot receiver, and that has been DeAndre Carter's position. So does he just jump right in for DeAndre Carter? I mean, the dude has not played in 5 games, or almost a month and a half. And the last time we saw him actually make it through a full game was week 6, and he's been battling this hamstring injury since like the first day of training camp. So his health is about as shaky as it gets, man. And so are they going to all of a sudden just force him back into like a full-time role? I don't know. The last 2 times that happened, he had to leave the game early. So is he going to be sharing time with DeAndre Carter? I think that Vincent Smith actually has the most secure role among the Titans' complementary pass catchers, and he's cheap. He's about as cheap as it gets. And on FanDuel, he's 4,600. That's 100 above minimum. So I think that he is a really interesting dart throw kind of play, because I think that he's going to be locked in on the outside, and then QT and DeAndre Carter are the slot options.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Alex, how are you feeling about the prospects of QT and Carter, knowing that there could be some time sharing there could be some machinations which could mess up their opportunity?
Here's the difference between NBA and MLB and NFL for all you guys who have played other fantasy sports, is that if a guy is active in NFL, Chris,
because you took a big swig and you're like, here's the difference.
That's what a power hour is, man. So, in NFL, if a guy's active, that doesn't mean he's going to be full strength. Where if there's an 82-game season, if a guy's active off injury, it's almost a certain, unless he's been gone a long time, that he's full strength. So, if QT is active, that really doesn't give you enough information to full-heartedly put him in your lineups. I do like the price 4K on DraftKings, but it's considerably risky. I would think that going to Vincent Smith or Carter is probably safer, even if QT is active for the game.
Evan, do you have any love for the tight ends here? We have Jordan Thomas and Ryan Griffin both getting some snaps and both having some days that looked okay. I don't know. I feel like you got to at least talk about these guys because they're both under 3K on DraftKings, and I mean they're cheap on both sides, obviously. And the Colts are bad versus tight end. According to DVOA, they're giving up a 21% boost. How do you feel about the tight ends prospects?
Yeah, I like Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin gets the snaps. He runs the routes. He had a big game against the Colts in Week 14. He had 5 for 80. He made a big play late in that game to set up DeAndre Hopkins touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins was terrible in that second game. He was terrible in that second game. He didn't do anything until Ryan Griffin set him up with a big play, and then he was able to score a short touchdown. The Colts went hard after him, after DeAndre Hopkins, putting him in bracket and cloud coverage or whatever you want to call it, using linebackers to like cut off the slant and, safeties to try to creep up and, help on those sideline catches that DeAndre Hopkins makes that are freaking unstoppable, and he will make in like triple coverage. I mean, I think he was the best receiver in the NFL this year. But but the Colts know that, and they treated him accordingly last time out. And I think that other guys can benefit from that, whether it be Vincent Smith or Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin is getting the most opportunity in the tight end core. And as you mentioned, it's part of the Colts scheme. I mean, they try to take away big plays. I think we talked about this earlier in the year, how they, they're kind of like built in the old Tony Dungy, sort of manner where they want to make you have long drives and try to force turnovers and use their speed to, their version of the old, Bucks linebacker Derek Brooks is Darius Leonard, and they will allow you to complete passes to your tight ends and your running backs, but they are not going to give up big play. And they scheme specifically for DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Ryan Griffin is the clear play among the Texans tight ends. The other guys, Jordan Akins and Jordan Thomas, you kind of never know who's going to get the opportunity in terms of snaps and targets and routes run. Like in the last game, it was Jordan Akins. Before that, it had been Jordan Thomas. So I'm kind of avoiding them and looking at Ryan Griffin, and he's nice and cheap, really nice and cheap.
Yeah, I think that he jumps out to me as a guy who's not projected for much ownership. A little under 7% is our current ownership projection on him. And he does have a little bit of upside. And he can get a bunch of targets too. And I feel like the playoffs, got to trust the teams will rely on guys that are actually reliable. And Ryan Griffin has been a guy they've turned to in the past when they've needed to get that ball moving. Alex, talk to me about Lamar Miller. He's under 5K on DraftKings, 21% projected ownership. He seems like a guy who maybe if we're going to fade Zeke or we're just going to try to get a little more creative that you'd want in your running back slot. How do you feel about Miller's prospects versus the Colts?
Yeah, I think that he has great prospects. One thing that was really encouraging is he ran routes on about 2/3 of the passing plays in Week 17 where the Texans had to win. The rushing is going to be kind of split between him, Alfred Blue, and Watson. So I think that he's going to get about half the rushing attempts probably. And at 5K, you're paying for a guy that isn't like a total stud, and Lamar Miller fits in pretty nicely when you're building a lineup this week.
Evan, anything you're seeing rushing-wise that would give you pause about playing Miller?
I mean, just that the Colts are good in run defense, and Lamar Miller really only played in one of the final 3 games. He doesn't catch passes. The Texans' offensive line allowed the most tackles for loss in the NFL, just giving up a ton of penetration. A lot of concerns for Lamar Miller. Home favorite, but I'm not buying it. I think the Colts are going to win the game.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk more about the Colts side then. We talked obviously about these guys being chalky. Evan, if you we're out of the 3 main guys, let's throw Marlon Mack in there. So out of Luck, Mack, Hilton, and Ebron, which guy do you feel like you'd be most comfortable being like, all right, that guy could fail pretty easily. I don't want him.
Mack.
Yeah, I would
for
agree
sure.
there.
Yeah, he's been the least consistent. He's kind of like he's very game flow dependent. Because if they fall behind, I think we're going to see more of Nyheim Hines. I think Nyheim Hines is a great sleeper on DK. Him and Tarek Cohen. Tarek Cohen, not as much of a sleeper, but just a great play, period. But Marlon Mack. I mean, he's kind of touchdown dependent. He's kind of game flow dependent, and he has a low floor, and we've seen that. And the Texans have a great run defense. And he's not really a true every down back. So, yeah, definitely Marlon Mack.
Yeah, the Texans giving up a slate low 3.4 yards per rush. So just throw that out there. Now, Alex, how about you? Which of the 4 would, I guess, let's take Mack out of the equation. We take Mack off the board because Evan took him off, and I agreed. Alex, out of the remaining 3, Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron, who would you feel the most comfortable with just taking out of your lineups?
I mean, this is kind of a cop-out, but it'd be Luck because you only get to roster 1 quarterback where you get to roster 3 wide receivers on most sites. And because of that, Hilton fits in easier into the roster construction. Chance that he'll be one of the top 3 wide receivers is higher than the chance that Luck will be the top quarterback. And I really like Ebron's chances of being the best tight end on the slate. I mean, between him and Ertz, those are the two studs, and Ebron's the cheaper one. So I think that he's a great play.
And it's been a good tight end matchup versus the Texans this year as well. Evan, talk to me about Dontrell Inman real fast before we move on to the next game, because his role's been on the upswing since T.Y. Hilton's been banged up with that ankle injury. And Inman's also banged up a little as well. How are we feeling about him heading into this game? He's pretty reasonably priced and not highly owned despite a couple of big games to close out the year.
Really? All right, that's interesting. See, I had been under the impression that he was going to be pretty highly owned.
Yeah, 13.5% on DK projected right now, and I'll look up FanDuel.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I mean, that's strong. He's a strong play in every respect. I mean, he's got 40-plus yards and/or a touchdown in 6 of his last 8 games. One of those, I believe, he left early, that he didn't hit it. And then, so he's been fairly consistent. His role is he's always right around 5-6 targets. They've shown him some red zone love. He's caught some short touchdown passes. And he's the clear number 2 receiver. I think that he is interesting along with Chester Rogers. And I think Chester Rogers might even have half of his ownership, if that, I would guess.
Yeah, Inman, by the way, also projected for under 11% ownership on FanDuel, where he's a little bit higher priced. But yeah, similar ownership expected for Dontrell Inman. Chester Rogers projected for 6% ownership right now, so half of what Inman has.
Yeah. So I think that both of those guys are pretty interesting. I think that Inman is clearly the better play. You get a little bit of the ownership advantage with Rogers. I think that Inman I would project him to run like 5 to 8 more pass routes than Chester Rogers, and I would project him for maybe a target or a half a target more than Chester Rogers. He's also going to get a little bit more big play chances. Chester Rogers is like all slot receiver. He's like, whenever he's in the game, he's in the slot. And whereas Inman moves around a little bit more, will play more outside. That's not a bad thing against the Texans outside cornerbacks. That's kind of where I stand on those complementary wideouts for the Colts. It's Hilton is the clear one, Inman is the pretty clear 2, and then Rogers is kind of right below Inman, not really threatening Inman, but but he's clearly like his role is defined as the slot receiver.
There you go. And I guess before we move on, while we're talking about this passing attack, Mo Alley-Cox, any interest at all in him, Evan?
I mean, I like him as a dude, but
it seems like a great guy.
I mean, he's like a beast specimen. I mean, he's unbelievable. Like, he's huge and he's athletic. I mean, he's a basketball player. He's a legit basketball player. He had 7 catches all year. Okay, but 5 of them went for 17 or more yards. 2 of them went for touchdowns. He's like an Awesemo play. He's kind of crazy, but he's got some potential, no doubt.
Dude,
Alex, how are you feeling about Mo Alley-Cox?
Oh man, come on! You can't say that's an Awesemo play just because I picked Andy Jones one week. Anyway, I got mentioned the reason why we're talking about these guys in the first place, aside from Alley-Cox, is that Ryan Grant is out. The Colts have been running a pretty deep rotation of wide receivers. So Grant being out gives Inman and Rogers and Pascal a bigger slice of the pie. I agree with Evan that Inman and Rogers are my 2 targets. I like Rogers equally because he's like a 1K lower on all the sites. So they kind of accounted for his lower role. But yeah, I think those are I thought they might be some good sleepers, but apparently, based on our ownership projections, everyone else is kind of onto them too.
Everybody's digging deep for the playoffs. So that's the first game on the slate. So that's probably one of the main ones that people are going to talk about. Let's move on to the second on the Saturday slate, the nightcap there. Seahawks heading into a game with Dallas. The Cowboys rested some guys last week. Didn't rest their starting quarterback. Dak played that entire game. Blake Jarwin went nuts, had over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game, which it seemed like he was just everywhere. I guess the guy to talk about up front here is Zeke. Zeke is projected for 60% ownership right now on DraftKings. I'm going to presume a comparable amount on FanDuel. I don't have that in front of me. Actually, I'll pull it up. Here we go. Yeah, 59% on FanDuel as well. So Zeke going to be owned everywhere. It makes sense. The Seattle's bad versus the rush. It's been their story all year. Alex, how are we feeling about Dallas here? They're not a great point total, but Zeke is going to be the guy apparently this slate.
Yeah, I think that the thing that Zeke has that is it kind of justifies the ownership is he has the highest point projection of any skill position player by far, and the variance of a running back compared to a wide receiver is pretty low, and there's big question marks around the other stud running back, Melvin Gordon, because as Evan pointed out in his matchups column, he's still not like 100%. So even if if Gordon was 100%, he might be still lower than Zeke, with some question marks around Melvin Gordon's health. That makes Zeke the clear number one projected player of the week.
Yeah, Zeke definitely looks like a strong play. Evan, are you on the same page with Zeke? Any concerns at all for you? Evan?
I was saying that I think that you should just put him on every single team, probably. I mean,
okay. Yeah, I would agree with that.
To go overweight on, right? You go overweight on him, I would think.
Well, here's the thing: is when you roster Zeke, it's to kind of soak up all the salary that you get. The only way you can do that is if you find these contrarian plays. If all the contrarian plays suck this week, then maybe he won't be in the best lineup. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to mention about the injury situations because you touched on it, Spags, at the top with T.Y. Hilton. Alex just talked about Melvin Gordon. I tweeted out a great article from Pro Football Doc, Dr. Chow, about just looking at the injury situations in every single game. He thinks that T.Y. Hilton is fine, which is not the rhetoric that's coming from the team, based on what Frank Reich has said and based on the fact that he's not practicing. But, you think about it, he doesn't need to practice. He doesn't need to practice. He's got a great rapport with Andrew Luck. And the dude leads the NFL in receiving yards by over 150 from weeks 10 through 17. Is he trying to trick us? Dr. Chow's like, based on video, this guy's fine. Based on data, production, this guy's fine. So I don't know, man. I mean, another thing that Dr. Chow says is the players that are dealing with foot injuries, it actually affects them more when they're walking. So, if you see them limping, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's going to have pain when he's walking, but when he's running, they don't feel it. So I think all that stuff's interesting to take in. I really have zero injury concerns about T.Y. Hilton. I'm sure that will come back to bite me. With Melvin Gordon, though, that is an actual concern because he's got believed to be a high ankle sprain, a mild high ankle sprain on the same leg that he had a previous MCL sprain. So he's got an injury to the two major joints on the same leg. That is worrisome.
Yeah, I think that does make sense there. Melvin Gordon, obviously, also in a tough matchup, so that definitely makes it easier to kind of look the other way. But I guess that also could make it more contrarian. We'll get some more Melvin Gordon talk when we get to that game. Quick question from Sports Betting Man in the YouTube chat, which I think is relevant to what Alex just said. He says, if we're doing only one entry for the postseason challenge is loading up with studs at death sentence, how many on the contrary type picks must we have to have a shot at lower ownership? Alex, how would you approach that if you're going to have super chalky Zeke, maybe a chalky Andrew Luck, and a chalky T.Y. Hilton? How are you differentiating? How many of these guys do you think need to have that, let's say, under 10% ownership?
I'd love to reveal that, but that's strictly confidential information. No, just kidding. It really there's two ways to kind of measure how contrarian your lineup is. You can add up all the ownership projections of the players, or you can multiply them together. So, if you're 1% guy, that might make your lineup super contrarian, even if all the other guys are chalk. So those would be the two metrics I'd use to kind of measure how contrarian your lineup is. You can actually use the lineup builder on our site to give you a rating to determine what percentile of contrariness your lineup is going to fall under. So I think that's a cool tool that we've developed.
What about this? Like just coming up with like a kind of contrarian idea for the way that you're going to build your lineup. Like, hey, all right, let's say we think maybe the Bears are going to blow out the Eagles, or maybe that game goes off. Maybe Nick Foles, rediscovers his magic from last January, and the Bears just kind of pour it on a pretty a vulnerable Eagles defense. And maybe that game goes off. Let's stack it. Let's go Trubisky. We really like Tarek Cohen. We're playing DraftKings. We really like Tariq Cohen. Let's bring it back with Alshon. And then let's maybe we think that we think we could be like, we think that the Ravens are just going to run it down the throat of the Chargers. The Chargers are missing 3 starting linebackers. They're missing a starting defensive tackle. Let's play Kenneth Dixon and Gus Edwards. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that you could just use like concepts and ideas and theories about, hey, if I get these 2 or 3 things right about the weekend, and I build that into my DFS lineup, if I just get 2 or 3 things right, then and they're not things that most people are thinking, then I can give myself an advantage.
So I think on that point, Evan, I think there are a couple things in this Dallas game which actually tie to what you're saying. Because to me, what jumps out, Russell Wilson projected for just 10% ownership and on Seattle's side. Doug Baldwin at 16%, Tyler Lockett at 19%, so he's the highest owned wide receiver there. But a lot more people playing Chris Carson at 21%. Same thing for Dallas. A lot of Zeke ownership, like we discussed. Not much on Dak, not a whole lot on Amari Cooper. Some on Blake Jarwin, which people are obviously going to chase that big game. But I think over here, going with like a Cowboys onslaught or going with the Seattle passing attack, running it back with them versus Zeke, I think are contrarian options that are in this game, which makes sense. I like the Cowboys D is good, but they're more of a bend but don't break defense. They're not going to really put the fear of God into Russell Wilson, I don't think. And I think for me, like loading up on the passing attack on Seattle with Zeke would be a way to differentiate your lineup and also get that, obviously the Zeke lock that we're talking about. Alex, how do you feel about Seattle's passing attack? Are you on the same page with me, or are you feeling differently?
Well, first I want to address this earlier point. Football is really interesting because it's a game of incentives. So in the second half of games, what makes a good game is that the trailing team has the ball. If the trailing team has the ball, then they're going to be trying to move the ball. And if the leading team has the ball, they're going to be trying to run out the clock, soak up as much time. And what ends up happening is you could have a game like the Chargers versus the Ravens, and the team total is, or the total is the lowest on the slate. But just because the trailing team has the ball in each possession, that could be a really awesome game, So that's where the game stack kind of concept comes into play. As far as passing offenses, I actually am getting Wilson, he's not one of my favorite quarterbacks.
I thought you were going to say I actually am getting drunk right now on the show.
No, man. I drink enough that a power hour doesn't faze me.
People want to know what you're drinking, by the way, in the YouTube chat.
Here's the thing is that Russell Wilson, I'm glad that I'm encouraging all the people to be alcoholics like me. It's a good way to cope with fantasy, the stress of the daily fantasy life. But anyway, Russell Wilson, he passes the ball about as low as anyone in the league other than Lamar Jackson. So that's a big problem. I mean, the Seahawks rush the ball about half the time, and that makes his production low, even though that his efficiency per play is high. And I think that makes it tough to stack the Seahawks. Of course, it's a 4-game slate, so if the Seahawks are trailing versus Dallas for most of the game, then Wilson could have a huge game, and pairing him with Lockett or Baldwin could pay off big.
Interesting. How do you feel about Chris Carson at 23% projected ownership? His price is up. He's still mostly a running base, not a pass catching running back. Are you okay with him? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about him and assuming he's just a lock because he's been getting so many touches over the last month plus.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, rushing touches are worth less than passing touches because of the bonus players get for receiving. And that's especially big for running backs because they catch about 80% of their passes. So when you have a guy like Carson, he's priced as one of the higher priced running backs on the slate. Uh, I'm having trouble getting to him when you have guys like Elliott and Gordon who kind of do it in both roles. Um, and Carson only is involved in the rush game. And to top it off, I think there's some really good running back, low price plays this week that make it hard to get to him.
All right. Yeah, that does make sense. Evan, how are you feeling about Chris Carson's prospects here?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good volume-based play. If he's going to be that high owned, like he could easily fail for the reasons that Alex outlined. He doesn't have a great floor because of the lack of consistent receiving volume. Rashad Penny is back. He barely played in week 17. He played 4 snaps, got 4 touches, but hey, he has popped up for games that, where he gets 8 to 10 touches. That would really hurt Chris Carson. Mike Davis is kind of locked into the passing game specialist role. He's kind of interesting, I think, on DK specifically. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a good fade in tournaments. I think Chris Carson is a great player to fade in tournaments. And go with Jordan Howard, who, hey, he's not like as sexy, but he's in a much better spot. My guess is that he's going to have certainly lower ownership. He's kind of a similar type of player, really. He's like the arbitrage Chris Carson. Jordan Howard is like the arbitrage Chris Carson,
It's a very good analogy.
And he's in a much better spot, and he's got a better matchup.
Yeah, I like Jordan Howard a lot. They are projected for the same ownership, though, roughly, for whatever that's worth, Carson and Jordan Howard.
Well, are you getting like a price edge at least?
Yeah, you're getting – so Carson is at 6,800 on DraftKings, Jordan Howard 4,600. So, yeah, definitely a big price difference.
Significant, yeah. Ooh, wow, 4,600 for Jordan Howard on DK?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. That's awesome.
Evan, man, clearly you haven't been playing the previous 17 weeks of DraftKings because he sucked in all 17.
Whoa.
No, that's unfair. He's on a hell of a run. 3 out of his last 4 games, over 20 touches. He's had over 100 yards. He was actually – I know this because I talked about him on the DraftKings live show, which is also on Sunday if you want to watch me on TV in the tri-state area. But Jordan Howard getting got to plug myself sometimes. Just getting a ton of touches, and it's a really good rushing matchup. Evan, I guess, do you want to give more counterpoints why Jordan Howard is in a good spot? And he actually hasn't been terrible all 17 weeks.
I just think that we've reached the point in the show where we can't really take anything seriously that Osimo is saying because he's so drunk.
Hey, man, I've only had 2 beers so far. Like, what kind of lightweight do you think I am?
You're Chicago bred. Chicago men can drink. We all know that.
But here's the thing. My bad. Jordan Howard sucked in the first 16 weeks. He was good in week 17.
We should talk more about this later, but I guess we're on it now. Jordan Howard, to me, what I think that last month was them gearing up for a playoff run, and Matt Nagy kind of, after Jordan Howard was basically a non-factor and people thought he was getting more involved in the pass game. I think what they're doing is getting ready for, hey, it's playoff football. We have to win, or at least be prepared to win in unconventional ways. And one of those is leaning on Jordan Howard and squeezing the air out of the ball. And I think that's why Jordan Howard's an interesting play, especially if Foles is showing signs of life. I think that's when they might lean on Howard more.
Well, I can go into this more when we talk about the Bears, but I feel like Tariq Cohen, the team is just a superior team with him on the field. So if the Bears are up, they're going to run out the ball with Howard. But I feel like Tariq Cohen, especially in games that are win or go home, is probably going to have more of a role than he does during the regular season.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. Well, so we got some stuff to look for. A little foreshadowing for when we talk about that game. Let's finish up this one. Doug Baldwin's targets are up. His air yards are up. David Moore seems like he's regressed to the background. Tyler Lockett, perfect QB rating for Russell Wilson throwing to him this year. I just want to point those stats out before we move on. On the Cowboys side, Evan, how are you feeling about Dak to Amari? It's a matchup where Seattle does run a pretty good amount of man coverage, which we've talked about at points this year, which that's one of the things that helps Dak out quite a bit. How are you feeling about Dak to Amari?
Seattle's pretty heavy zone. So that's one thing I don't like about them. I also don't like that Dak has played against Seattle twice over the past 2 seasons. Once last year, I think it was late last year, and then once real early this year, and he was bad in both games. Seattle, because they play a lot of zone, they don't give up a lot of quarterback rushing yards, and his rushing has not been great, about 20 yards per game. That's actually pretty good for him. That's above his average. But overall, Seattle does not give up very many quarterback rushing yards because they play a lot of zone, and their defenders are they're facing forward. They're not running away from the offense, and creating big gaps in the middle of the field where Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson can just take off where Dak Prescott could just take off and peel off a 25-yard gain. It's not going to be that easy. So those are concerns. Dak Prescott has been great at home. If you buy into the home away stuff, all of Amari's good games have been at home. He's averaging 110 yards per game at home in Dallas, 5-game sample, and then 45 yards per game in the 4-game sample on the road since joining the Cowboys. Dak did have a great game last week on the road, but for the most part, he's had most of his success at Jerry World. So, I don't like Dak here, and I actually like the Seahawks defense. What do you guys think about this correlation? I threw it out on the Swolecast, and no one really took a stand on it. So, all right, we kind of like Dak. We like that Dak takes a lot of sacks, right? He took the second most sacks in the NFL this year. You look at Football Outsiders; they have the offensive line metrics for the Cowboys are real bad in pass protection, really bad, bottom 5 in the NFL. So we kind of like Seahawks defense. Okay, we know that, or we like the idea of maybe Chris Carson. That if a defense is going to have a good day, it correlates pretty well with the running back. Let's just say the Seahawks kind of control the game. Maybe they just kind of control the game, and they wind up being the better team, which is possible. So we played Chris Carson and Seahawks defense, and then we know that, hey, if Tyler Lockett runs one back as a punt or a kick returner, because he's been doing both lately, then we get a 6 for Lockett and we get a 6 for the Seahawks DST. So we get 12 points for one play if that happens. It's really low probability that that's going to happen. But it's also really low probability that we're winning a DFS tournament. Unless we're awesome-o. Then we just win every weekend or every
Alex,
night.
What do you think about that correlation play there for Evan? And is it worth making another power event?
Well, I agree with Evan. That's pretty low probability because if you look at return touchdowns, I think that on the whole season there's maybe a dozen or two, so that they happen very rarely. But as far as defense, if you get the one that
let me ask you this: what's the higher probability? Tyler Lockett running back a touchdown on special teams, or the everyday random guy winning a GPP?
Oh yeah, I mean the odds of Lockett getting a return touchdown are probably say it's 1%. Your odds of winning a GPP are about 1 in 50,000 or something, or however many people are in the tournament. So that definitely is true. But I'm a little hesitant to try to do defense correlations because it's so much about just one sack or one interception turning into a touchdown on a game with 4, or honestly with 4 games. The odds are one team is going to have a defense or special teams touchdown, and you're going to have that team to win the tournament. Mm-hmm. So it could be anyone. I mean, you want to probably focus on teams that get more sacks and interceptions.
I just I've had this idea before, and I'd really just want it to happen. So I mean, this is ridiculous, but if it does hit, it could be for all the marbles. You know, I mean, all right. So let's say you get you get Carson his normal 20, like just a normal day for Chris Carson, 20 carries, we'll give him 90 yards and a touchdown. Okay, and then we get Lockett gets like 5 for 70 and a touchdown receiving, and then we get like 6 sacks on Dak, which is very possible. I mean, the Seahawks were top 11 in the NFL in sacks, top 4 in quarterback hits. You know, we get we'll say 4 or 5 sacks, okay? And they hold them to, 17, which is all reasonable. And then we get the 12 spot on top of that, that would be sick. All we would have to do is just have kind of regular days from everybody. And then we get the 12 on top of it. I mean, that's we're waking up in Bugattis. We're waking up in Osimo's Bugatti. Actually,
well, Evan, man,
we buy it from Osimo. We're like, we don't want a Bugatti, from anywhere else. We want Osimo's Bugatti.
Yeah, man. I wish I had a Bugatti. Maybe if I win the tournament this weekend, I'll get one. But here's the thing: is every single lineup in DFS has some sort of circumstances where it could come true. And that's why we all play the game. The chance of any lineup having that kind of day is small, and that's why you build in these correlations. And in the Seahawks D, that is it's a small correlation, so that makes the lineup better. But then you have to compare it with the ownership. Like, what percentage of people are going to have Carson and the Seahawks? Is that correlation between rostering the two bigger than the correlation of them succeeding together? There's a lot of factors that come into play in the strategy.
Yeah, so there you go. So that is, in a world of infinite outcomes, that is one where if you were playing a Black Mirror movie, choose your adventure, you can choose one where Tyler Lockett gets a punt return touchdown. Any quick thoughts? We got to finish up this game. I feel like we've been on this game forever. But Blake Jarwin, real fast. Evan, any quick thoughts on him? Any remote fans, while we're talking about remote possibilities, any remote chance of him putting up another 3 TD game in this playoff?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the 3 TD game. No, that's not.
People unlikely, perhaps.
No, yeah, that's legit not happening. Like the Tyler Lockett stuff is likely. But his role had increased, but prior to that, he had a couple of 7-target games leading into that. He was just over the last month of the season, he was top 7 in the NFL in both targets and air yards among tight ends. So he's definitely in play. It's just his price freaking skyrocketed, and he's not really making sense for me when I'm trying to build lineups, but he's in play on a weak tight end slate.
Vibe in the YouTube chat. I like drunk Osimo dropping mad gems. So there we go. I feel like the people demand more drunk Osimo. It's all I've ever wanted. Let's go on to the next game. Give us some more, drink some more, Alex. Alex, by the way, if you are just tuning in now, this is a live stream. If you're watching it after the fact, obviously we're trying to do both at the same time this week. Alex is doing a power hour as penance for a bet that he made with Evan over Andy Jones versus Alex Erickson a few weeks ago. So that's why Alex is currently drinking shots of beer as we do this show.
Just don't adjust your YouTube. This isn't the DFS Power Hour, which is also a very great show. This is just awesome.com, and I'm doing a Power Hour. It's a small distinction.
Do they drink on the DFS Power Hour? I haven't caught that show before.
I don't think they actually do a Power Hour, but they should.
Yeah, can we steal that concept?
They did.
they used to do that. They used to, but then one of the dudes stopped drinking. He quit. So.
That's respectable.
Yeah, that's respectable, but you can't be the DFS Power Hour. Then be like the DFS McLaughlin Hour where you talk and debate. Call yourself the Power Hour. LA Chargers, but shout out to the DFS Power Hour. I've never listened, but I'm sure they're a
great show. No, they're awesome. I do their show every year on Thanksgiving. They're awesome dudes. They're super, super sharp. They're great, kind of micro slate dudes, because they'll go real deep. They're great at preseason DFS as well. I would recommend them to anyone.
Yeah, we have love for anybody out there doing smart stuff and not just hawking picks as though that's a wild cause. So
actually, Chris, that's what we're leaning towards with our vision of awesome.com. We're just gonna do pick.
straight picks and drunkenness. That's all we ever wanted. So let's go on to the Sunday slate. Obviously, this slate is going to be the uglier slate of games, which probably is why FanDuel is opted to heavy up on the Saturday games. But on DraftKings, a lot of the big tournaments are Saturday through Sunday, so we are going to go pretty deep here as well. We got the Chargers going into Baltimore. Chargers have a 19.3 point team total. Oof. Baltimore has a 22.3 team total. Not a high-scoring game expected here. We talked about Melvin Gordon's banged-up injuries, but Evan, real fast, quick thoughts on Melvin Gordon's injuries that are lingering from the regular season.
Yeah, I'm worried about him. We talked about him for a minute. He has not had over 15 touches in a game since week 11. He's like the opposite of T.Y. Hilton. He's got an actual injury, and he's not producing. You know, like T.Y. Hilton is producing. Melvin Gordon has not been producing. He hasn't been like making it through games. You know, he hasn't been lasting through games. I got to go grab my power cord because my battery's about to run out. I'll be back in a second.
Get it. Alex, what are your thoughts here?
Well, here's the thing: is the Chargers last week. You can't take what they did as gospel because the situation was that they had to win and the Chiefs had to lose for them to advance in the seeding. The Chiefs were up huge in halftime. So I don't have the half-by-half splits, but it would make sense to me that they threw out Justin Jackson instead of Gordon in the second half. You can watch the game to get more information on that. But I don't think you can take that as the accurate estimation of his health level. So a week after playing, I think he should be healthier than last week. And I think that he makes a good play if other people are fading him because they're worried about him being injured.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. He also is at a low price for where he's been this year. Also, our video's a little wonky, Josh, if you can hear me.
Evan turned his camera off. There's nothing I can do.
Oh, okay.
He does it
never mind
regularly.
So we're just all seeing what Alex is seeing as he gets drunk then now. that's
all
good.
All the windows move around when that happens.
Gotcha.
So okay. I have
no
quick
whatever.
fix.
So I agree with you though that Melvin Gordon, though, his price being down makes sense. Keenan Allen's a guy I'm curious about because he was hurt when they played earlier this year. He was in the game, but he was hurt. And I think, he's never going to be full health, but I think he's going to be as close to full health as he can be. Obviously fired up here. And I think with the playoffs too, teams focusing on the guys who they can trust in these spots. And to me, that's going to be Phillip Rivers trusting Keenan Allen. I'm intrigued by Keenan Allen under 20% ownership and at his price down as well. It's not a great matchup, obviously, but Alex, what are your thoughts on Keenan Allen here?
Yeah, I love Keenan Allen this week. I think if he's 20% owned, I'm definitely going to be above the field. The main factor is that Baltimore could run out the clock, and they've been having success doing so and playing at a really slow pace. But the other way this game could go is that Rivers in the passing offense have a lot of success with Allen. And then I think as far as talent level, he's as high as anyone, save Hopkins on the slate. So I think that I think that the potential for him to have the GPP winning performance is pretty high.
Yeah, and I think too the targets could just be there for him. Where even if they're covering him well, it's not like he's a guy who needs to get super deep downfield and they're going to double him over the top and bracket him in some ways. Like he could easily pick up some short targets. He could have like a 15 target day because they need every yard they can get. And if Melvin Gordon struggles and Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson don't do enough back there, you could see them lean on Allen quite a bit. We also had people asking about Mike Williams before. He's been getting a pretty good target load. He had 10 touchdowns on the year, which people kind of sleep on.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about Mike Williams, Alex?
I'm gonna have to look into this more if he got 10 touchdowns, but I honestly am not as keen on him. The price of 4,700 puts him really into kind of a territory where it's harder to fall if unless you think I guess I just have him as kind of a secondary play, like with Keenan Allen getting a majority of the workload, Gordon also like being the number 2 receiver probably. Then you have Eckler getting a lot of targets. So Mike Williams and Tyrell Williams. Although it could be, I know the Williams stack did pretty well in a few weeks. I'm not really as keen on those guys just because the overall outlook for Rivers isn't that high, and these guys are even bigger kind of long shots to go up.
Evan, how are you feeling about the pass catchers and the whole passing game situation for the Chargers here?
I just don't like the Chargers offense at all. The play volume is a severe issue. I think Alex touched on it. Teams that are playing them are averaging almost 100 plays per game. Teams that are playing the Ravens. So I don't want to test it. And then, you have to get where you want to go against the Ravens, with like 20% of your play volume shaved off. And, you're facing the Ravens defense for the 80% that you have left. Like that is not optimal. Isn't that like how like the Spurs would kind of play? Like, people play, people play different sports, they pay attention to different sports, and they slow the game down and then they beat your ass on defense too.
Well, Evan, here's the thing is that the Ravens have gone 5-1 over the Lamar Jackson starts.
6-1.
6-1, my bad. So, it's just not an unbiased sample because they led in most of these games. So, they took more of the share of plays simply because they were ahead. Where this game, the spread is minus 2.5, and the chance that it's going to be a close game or they're going to be behind is a lot higher.
Maybe. I was shocked to learn this, that the Chargers are the biggest public bet team of the weekend.
Really?
Yeah, the public is all over the Chargers. 70% of the bets, by far the most of any team on the wild card slate. I was like, what? When someone smart told me that, and I was like, wow. The Ravens actually. So you get a chance to fade the public, and bet on a team that I think is clearly superior. I mean, the Ravens went to their house 2 weeks ago, beat them 22-10. I think the public does not like Lamar Jackson because they see the way that he throws. He's very inconsistent. He can make highlight splash plays, and they don't believe in him as being a runner, I guess. I don't know. This Ravens team is really hard to beat. The only loss that they have with Lamar Jackson, they went to Kansas City and lost by 3 in an overtime game. I mean, I think they're kind of a sleeper to go to the Super Bowl, the Ravens.
Yeah, their approach to offense certainly does fly with what's worked in the playoffs in the past for decades and decades. I'm surprised at that public team thing. I guess one thing you did mention, though, the Chargers that they lost at home. I don't think that matters here in LA because the StubHub Center is about as much of a home field advantage as I don't know, playing literally at the opponent's stadium, especially for a team like Baltimore who has a lot of fans nationally. I wouldn't clock that one necessarily as a ding on the Chargers, but I don't know. To me, I think you have an experienced quarterback in Rivers. You have a competent wide receiver in Allen. You have Melvin Gordon back there, whether he's hurt or not. He's at least been good and reliable for more of the year than not. I'm intrigued by the idea of just fading the idea of Baltimore just running over him because I think that's where everybody's saying this week is the Chargers don't stand a chance. The ownership backs it out. I guess the betting doesn't, but that was been my thought was that Rivers might be a good contrarian play because he's only 5% projected ownership. No interest at all as a contrarian, Rivers, Alex?
I have to admit, when I ran my initial projections, I had Rivers way higher than any of the sportsbooks I saw. So I'm gonna have to dig deeper, I think. But I can totally understand the public stance on this because the Chargers are 12-4. It would be fair to kind of say they had the second best season in the AFC. And the Ravens are 10-6. So, just going off what's happened this year, the Chargers may be the better team. Of course, a 2.5 spread, that could just be the home field advantage. But I wouldn't weight Lamar Jackson playing versus Joe Flacco that much differently. even though the strategy is so much different.
Interesting. How are you, Evan? How are you feeling about the Ravens side here? I mean, you talked about how maybe they could just completely dominate that side of the ball offensively. Are you feeling good about Lamar or Gus or Dixon? You mentioned them up top as well.
Yeah, I mean, with Lamar, it's like, does he have the upside of Andrew Luck? Does he have the upside of even Trubisky? Does he have the upside of Deshaun Watson? I'm not sure. He got close last week. He really did. But he took him 2 rushing touchdowns. He still didn't have a big day passing. He had a good week last week. He was top 5 among fantasy quarterbacks, 27 points. But we have not seen it come together. Is it going to come together against the Chargers? The Chargers are also in a weird position of being a far West Coast team going east for a 1 p.m. Eastern time game. I'm with you, Spags. Like, it actually may be about the playing in LA. It actually may be like detrimental to them because it's freaking depressing to go to your home stadium, which sucks, and then you're getting booed at your home stadium. They're probably used to it by now, though. But,
I think it's kind of built to callous where they might be more ready for a game like this than you would expect.
Yeah. They're kind of like a me against the world team, and that's why they they're able to go to Arrowhead and win that game. I don't know, but
Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh, and crazy comebacks where they just got dominated, like for the entire first half plus. But yeah, I think the Ravens roll them though. I mean, I really do. I think that I'm not as sure about Lamar. I really like Dixon and Gus Edwards. And the pass catchers are just, you're on your own. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen with the pass catchers, and I'm not going to pretend to. It's no one gets. There's no like trend that you can look at, like, oh, Lamar Jackson really locks onto this dude, or there's no like good specific matchup to target in the Chargers defense. Not that matters. Like, it's not like they're attacking matchups with Lamar Jackson, So, but I really like, and on the Sunday only slate, I think I'm going to play Dixon and Gus Edwards together at running back on FanDuel.
Alex, how do you feel about the Baltimore side of this equation?
I think that Gus Edwards would probably be the guy to target. I think the momentum has kind of been going to Dixon, but 4,200 for a guy that rushes like 20 times in the game. I mean, Gus Edwards got more rushing attempts in the last game too, even though the snap share was pretty similar. Or I guess my memory might be faulty here. It's about even. So, the thing I liked about Edwards, though, is that he actually saw more passing routes last week than he had been seeing in recent weeks. So I think that although the public might be higher on Dixon right now, I think Gus Edwards is pretty good. As far as wideouts, I like Michael Crabtree. His fantasy totals in the past 6 weeks have been 4, 3, 0, 6, 6, 11. So he's been totally shitting the bed. But his price is $3,600 on DraftKings and $4,600 on FanDuel. This guy, he's been getting like targets, not a lot, but as far as him, Snead, and Brown, I think it's pretty much a crapshoot who will do well. So I will just go with the guy who's the cheapest probably, and it's Crabtree.
And if you drink enough, you can actually talk yourself into playing Michael Crabtree.
Hey man, Evan, like, you were the one who asked me to do this power hour, and now you're
just can't win on this show. John Brown's a guy I've waited for them all year to throw one long bomb to John Brown that actually connects. I feel like for me, he's the guy where, like, maybe they've been holding out. Lamar can finally throw a pass above 20 yards once to John Brown and he can run it in. But I agree. It's a tough spot to target with the passing game here. I could see playing naked Lamar, but even that, not that great. Ironically enough, go ahead.
One of the great things about Lamar is that you don't have to pair him with a bunch of the team because he can get so much done himself. So I've been finding that just having him stacked with one other player on the Ravens, it's a pretty good strategy. Where with most quarterbacks, you want to have like 2 or more players on the same team.
There you go. So those are the thoughts on the Lamar Jackson opportunity there. And also make sure to use the promo code Contrary for all the premium features on Awesemo.com. All the ownership projections and rankings we have from Alex are going to be available for you, as well as other content. So go sign up now on Awesemo.com. Use promo code Contrary. Get all that for free for 1 week. Ironically, I was going to say, so this is a 3-game slate, and it's going to be our longest episode yet. So a lot of granular detail needed for the playoffs, I feel like, because so few options. But let's go to the last game on the slate. Philadelphia heading into a matchup with Chicago. We have some Foles magic on that side, which Vegas is not buying into. Philadelphia projected for the lowest total on the slate, 17.5 points. Chicago, a 6-point favorite at 23.5, at least as last that I had put into my spreadsheet. Chicago, not much ownership on Mitch Trubisky projected, under 10% there. Bit of a surprise, perhaps a contrarian QB play, and really no ownership at all expected on Philadelphia's side besides Zach Ertz, who's at 17%. Alex, how are we feeling about this one? It's a tough matchup on paper. Vegas totals don't support it, but we got Foles magic in the air. So what are we doing with it?
I think this isn't a great game to stack, but I see some good individual plays. Howard, you guys mentioned before, I think that he could be doing pretty well. The Bears, I like Tariq Cohen, though. I think that having a versatile player it has a higher EV per play than Howard. I think the Bears are smart enough to realize that. The main dig on Cohen is that he's just too small to last through a lot of work. But through playoffs, I think they're going to be willing to roll the dice a little bit more. On the other side, on the Eagles, Ertz, it'd be crazy not to have him as the top projected tight end. But the guy that I really like is Darren Sproles. He's gotten 7 and 9 rushing attempts in the past 2 weeks. He's gotten a good snap count. Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood don't have that kind of dual threat capability he has. So I think that at his price, 4,100 on DraftKings, I think that could be a pretty good dart throw.
Evan, how are you feeling about this Philly side here with a very low total? But again, the Super Bowl magic last year. What are we gonna ride with that or no?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like, these are we talk about volume based plays. Volume based plays like maybe Jordan Howard, Chris Carson, Marlon Mack to some extent. Matchup based play. Hey, this dude has a great matchup. With Nick Foles, he's a hope based play. He's a hope and prayers play. So that's what it is. There's no good data point to Foles is a good play this week. Seriously, I guess maybe the best one would just been that he's been a really hot and cold player, and he's just very high variance, So hey, maybe his best data point is maybe you catch you catch his highest, his peak variance, but he really only had one good fantasy game this season out of 5 starts, and he doesn't run. He doesn't run, so that hurts. And there's a bunch of good running quarterbacks on this slate. I love Trubisky, man. I love Trubisky as a play here. I love to hear that he's going to have really low ownership. I think you can absolutely play him in the same lineup as Tariq Cohen. And Allen Robinson, I think, is the best wide receiver play because he leads the team in air yards, targets per game, and receiving yards over the last 4 weeks. And that was despite missing one of the games with an injury, and he's full practice. He should be all systems go. So I do like the Bears side. I do like Jordan Howard on FanDuel. I think the Eagles' run defense was absolutely torched in weeks 10 through 15. Got better in the last 2 games, but they faced a dead Redskins team in week 17. And then in week 16, they faced the Texans, who didn't even have Lamar Miller in that game. So, that's – and I like Alshon on the Eagles side. And I'm with Osimo on Sproles. So, yeah, that's kind of where I stand. I think Aguilar is a little bit interesting. Oh, Dallas Goedert, I think is pretty interesting. The Eagles play a lot of 2 tight end sets, and I think that Bears defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, he's pretty creative, aggressive. Defensive coordinator. He's a guy who believes in attacking the offense, not just playing your defense every week, attacking the offense. And he will double team guys, no problem. And I think that the guy to double team in the Eagles offense is Ertz. And if that works, which it very often does with Vic Fangio, then other guys could benefit. It could be Alshon getting, more single looks. It could be Sproles to some extent as well. And it could be Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, we've seen Dallas Goedert have some big games in competitive spots before versus tough defenses, like that game versus Dallas where he had a couple grabs and a touchdown. I actually think that's a pretty interesting play, and pivot off of Ertz, who is obviously substantially higher owned and also one of the highest priced players on the slate. Also, one thing to note, the Bears defense. So Foles been dropping back about 40 times a game. The Bears D generating the most sacks on the slate. It seems like it could be a recipe for the Bears defense being in the play. They are the chalkiest defense on DraftKings, a little too expensive on FanDuel, but they're still the second highest projected ownership defense there. Evan, how are you feeling about the Bears D in this spot?
Man, I think that Alex said earlier in the season, he probably doesn't remember now. He probably doesn't remember anything right now. But he noted that the offense, what you want to look for when you're looking for defensive plays is you really want to go after bad offenses or offenses that tend to give up a lot of sacks. And the Eagles have not been giving up sacks with Nick Foles at quarterback. The Bears do generate a lot of sacks though, and they could definitely have a good game. I'm not playing them on FanDuel though because they're way too expensive. So the defenses that I'm looking at are, well, first of all, I'm looking at the Colts. Because the Texans fit the bill of being one of those defenses that Alex mentioned earlier in the year, or being one of those offenses that you want to attack with defenses because they give up so much sacks. I mean, the Colts didn't have a lot of sacks really over the course of the season, but they did against the Texans. They had 7 and 5 in their 2 meetings, and I mean it's every single week. Deshaun Watson, it's like you're starting with 4 sacks when you face Deshaun Watson, and now he doesn't have Will Fuller. He doesn't have Demaryius Thomas, and I don't think he's going to have much of a running game against the Colts. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Colts. I think the Colts are just an underrated defense, period. Over their last 7 games, they held their opponents to 15 points per game.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair one. Alex, how are you feeling about the defense this week?
Yeah, I have to agree with Evan on the Colts. The other team I like defense. Was it, as much as it pains me to admit it, is the Eagles. Mitch Trubisky has been known to throw an interception or two. Although they aren't favored in the game, they are bargain bin price. So I think that the difference between the bottom and the top in defense is pretty low this week. So I think that just spending on the Eagle or dropping down to the Eagles is a pretty good strategy.
Before we close out the actual game-by-game analysis and go to the contrarian picks and fade of the week and all that, real quick on the Chicago pass game, we didn't talk much about Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel. One thing that I think if Trubisky doesn't crap the bed, as Alex may have said that he has a possibility of doing, I think Matt Nagy's going to come out and aggressive at least to start and try to get these guys because he's such an inventive coordinator, and I think we've seen the Philadelphia secondary struggle so much. I'm intrigued by Taylor Gabriel. I think I'm intrigued by the idea of Cohen with Howard, even though we know that's not as positive of an approach as Alex has outlined in previous weeks. Allen Robinson, too, has seen a bunch of targets sometimes, and I think he has some upside as well. Alex, which guys would you want to stack here if you were going with the pass game? Or Trey Burton, too, revenge game, if we want to throw that out there.
Let me check real quick. I think the price is a huge factor here. On DraftKings, I'm not seeing a lot of Bears receivers, but on FanDuel, I like Gabriel a lot. He's only 5K. That's 500 more than the minimum price. And if you expect him to get 40 to 50 yards on average, that's a pretty good spend.
Evan, how about you? Any interest in these pass catchers for the Bears?
Yeah, Cohen, Allen Robinson, maybe Taylor Gabriel. He's real cheap, man. And he's got big playability. Trey Burton, I can't do it. Can't do it after a painful regular season. And Anthony Miller, Yeah, and Anthony Miller, like, no thanks, because the dude's arm keeps coming out of his socket.
Evan, I gotta bring this up, man. Trey Burton, revenge game, playoffs, like that's the thing, right?
Yeah, hey, if you want to build like a narrative-based team, we've talked about hope-based plays. We could build a narrative-based team. Absolutely. We put Alshon out there too. Alshon, Trey Burton, Alshon and Trey Burton just like trading narrative-based blows throughout the game.
There's a lot of narrative possibilities to unearth here. Real quick, YouTube chat saying, Awesemo, you are the man. Lots of positive reviews of your showing today, Alex, as you braved through this power hour. So I just want to salute you before we close it out with our contrarian picks. You paid off your bet in spades.
Thanks, man. I have to pee like Seabiscuit right now. So if we can go through these contrarian picks quick, that would be preferred.
Give me your contrarian QB, Alex.
All right. So I'm going to just assume that any quarterback other than Watson and Luck is contrarian.
Fair.
I will go with Rivers because I feel like it's such a game script dependent play that he could end up having a pretty big day.
All right, Evan, how about you? Contrarian QB pick.
Trubisky.
Yeah, I'm also going to. Well, you know what? All right, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to go Nick Foles. Why not? I feel like if he's right, then I'll be on the right side of history. But I like both of your guys more. I'll just go on record. Contrarian running back pick, Alex.
All right. Now I actually have the benefit of having the ownership projections up, so I will take a look here. I will have to go with. I don't like any of the super contrarian ones, so I'll go with Darren Sproles. He is 8% projected ownership on DraftKings. I think that his role has only been increasing, and he's the most versatile player. The Eagles are probably going to be trailing, and I think that bodes well for his success this week.
Evan, how about you, contrarian running back?
I'll go Naheem Hines.
All right. I will go. Oh, there's too much ownership on him, but whatever. I'm just going to go with him. Jordan Howard, we talked about him. There are enough guys in that ownership percentage there, and people are going to play Tariq Cohen, though we do have Howard projected for slightly more ownership than Cohen currently on DraftKings, at least. I think enough people are sleeping on Howard and have the philosophy that Alex mentioned above, where they just saw Howard be bad all year. So I think going to him this week could still get you above enough of the field with how he's been used and how bad the Eagles' rush defense is. Alex, contrarian wide receiver.
I will go with Michael Crabtree at 4%. He's been sucking totally, but we know this guy can have big games. The Chargers may be up in this game, which makes Jackson more likely to throw. And if he does, then Crabtree is as likely as any. He's been getting the snaps, and I think that he usually gets short passes, but that's fine. I just hope he gets a bunch of targets and catches.
There you go. Evan, how about you? Contrarian wide receiver.
Yeah, what is Alshon's ownership?
Alshon is projected for 14%, so that's fine on the slate.
All right. Oh, lock him in.
All right, Alshon, and I'm going to go man, it's tough because the contrarian guys are real weird. I guess I'll go Inman. I think Inman's an interesting play there, and if that game does shoot out, he's the lowest owned piece of that offense there, so go with him. And fade of the week, Alex, to close us out for this wild card weekend.
Bringing up the ownership now. I will go with Chris Carson. I think that at 23% ownership, he's just inferior to Gordon and Elliott. This could come back to bite me big time. So, but I think that he just doesn't get enough targets in the running game or in the passing game to really justify spending his price tag on both sides.
Evan, how about you? Fade of the week.
I have two fades. The first one is any team that plays Kiki QT. Anyone who plays Kiki QT. And also my other fade is anyone that doesn't play Ryan Griffin, because if you ain't playing Griffin, you ain't winning.
If you ain't playing Griffin, you whiffing.
Yeah, that's even better.
Wow. Drunk Alex really just coming through. Strong today. It's gonna suck when you just have to drink every day we do these shows.
Or when we go back to the shows where Osimo's sober.
You'd be like, oh, we like drunk Alex more. Start spiking his drinks.
I'm a man of the people.
I guess I'm going to join Alex on the Chris Carson fade. That was where I was thinking anyway. And I don't like the price, to be honest. And I think the Cowboys can do enough to limit him. And I just see it as a Russell Wilson day for me. So that'll be my fade. Alex, any parting words before we do that closeout spiel?
Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks, Evan. It's always a pleasure having you as a guest. The regular season was really fun. The postseason, hopefully, it will be even more fun because it's like win or go home, and that's my favorite format of any sort of game.
There we go. So it's playoff season. Good luck, everybody, this wild card weekend. Make sure to use that promo code CONTRARY to get 1 week free at Osmo.com. All the ownership projections that we discussed throughout the show and rankings from Osmo are available for you. You can peruse them at your leisure. Get them in there. Get in there now so you can get this for this wild card weekend. And good luck out there, everybody. We'll see you again soon.